Hello, welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me. In the series Freemasonry and Satanism, number 80. We're moving along here. Continuing on with the Peter Moon, Philadelphia Experiment, Project Montauk, Al Beback, Preston Nichols, and Cameron, and so many others involved in mind control, time tunnels, disappearing ships, and other mysteries. Are they real or are they not? If they are real, it should be concerning. And if they're not real, what's with all the propaganda and the books? That would be concerning. Are there that many liars and fabricators and deceivers out there? Is there an agenda? Change the paradigm of our reality. So no matter how you look at it, drop the book there, it might behoove us to see what's in these books and what books are out there on these different topics. Hence, I read the book and report. The Philadelphia Experiment and Other UFO Conspiracies. Brad Steiger with Alfred Bielek and Sherry Hansen Steiger. Look at the cover. It's like the Philadelphia ship down here, the Eldridge Philadelphia Experiment. Did it disappear? In October 1943, the middle of World War II, the U.S. Navy secretly accomplished the teleportation of a warship from Philadelphia to a dock near Norfolk by successfully applying Einstein's unified field theory. The experiment also caused the crew and officers of the ship to become invisible, during which time they were sent to a time-space warp into another dimension. Is this stuff true? Pause it and read it if you want to read it. So I'll just move along with this book as quickly as I can. Fantastic and Bizarre Experiments. Reading my highlighted portions as usual. From scientific data extracted from the Philadelphia Experiment, as well as from information derived through extraterrestrial sources, the military currently enjoys a remarkable acceleration of technology that is utterly mind-boggling to the average person. Got to get myself warmed up to do this reading properly. The CIA has all kinds of incredible technology that can work with the individual's genetic blueprint, an external matrix that flows around it. Did you hear what I just said? The CIA has all kinds of incredible technology that can work with the individual's genetic blueprint and the external matrix that flows around it. That would be our auric field. Makes one wonder about those HAARP transmitters, H-A-A-R-P, and the Gwen towers, ground wave. They're putting it up everywhere, apparently 100, 200 miles in secret. Then we have cell phones, laptops, wireless, power plants, transmission wires, RF signals with TVs, and so much more. Microwave transmitters. What do they know about how to control our DNA, our bodies? This book was published in 1990. Little picture here. The bizarre side of the UFO mystery. There has always been a strange and bizarre side to the UFO mystery ever since we became aware of its contemporary manifestation in 1947. From the very beginning, UFO researchers found themselves confronted with mysterious agents dressed in black who attempted to silence witnesses. Bigfoot-type entities, eerie, hooded figures, poltergeist-like explosions in the home, and bizarre electronic quirks of telephones, television sets, and radio receivers. Debates have been conducted among UFOologists concerning the source of such weird and frightening experiences. Are all these incredible manifestations truly the product of an extraterrestrial species that has traversed time and space to harass humankind in such spooky, silly, and senseless ways? Or is it the UFO enigma somehow the product of a spirit world, there you go, populated by ghosts, demons, and things that go bump in the night, that has always coexisted with humans on this planet? Well, we're seeking the mystery in this series of Freemasonry and Satanism, with all these secret goings-on of the Masonic lodges, the Illuminati, Scottish Rite, York Rite, Rosicrucians, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, Zionists, Jesuits, occultists, Hollywood, banksters, elitists, kings and queens, with apparently two types of entities that are popular: the reptilians and the ones that look like gray aliens. The ones that Aleister Crowley, the evilest man alive, says that he was communicating with. He drew a drawing of what he saw, and it looked like a gray alien, Haiwas, who said he was the god of war and vengeance. Makes you wonder. A lot of people don't believe in God or the devil, but we have all these books, and I have many UFO books, and we have many books on spiritual realities, psychic research, remote viewing, blackout projects of the government. Are we dealing with the expression of laws presently unknown to our science? Or are we the victims of illusion and deceit? There's the question. Are all these men in black monsters and strange entities, the various guises of extraterrestrials, or are earthly governments and their clever agencies? Sometimes I get off on a bad start with my reading. Somehow running a very strange show for reasons almost too frightening to contemplate. Or maybe we should just check all of the possibilities. An incredible demonstration of the unity of UFO phenomena. Reading my highlighted portions. Harry, Ben, and Peter, that's the names we'll use in this article, had learned of a small town in northern Wisconsin where it was claimed that UFO manifestations could be observed on almost nightly basis. Henry's information had told him that there was a woman named Miss Higgins who worked at the local newspaper who had become an authority on the UFO and creature sightings that had been made in the area over the past 20 years. All right, moving on. So over a pleasant early dinner, Mrs. Higgins informed them that phenomena of the paranormal nature had been observed in the vicinity of the village since the days of the pioneer homesteaders. The journals of the early settlers contain references to glowing lights, cat people, birdmen, ghosts, demons, and Bigfoot entities. Oh my. Mary stated that she favored the theory that she lived in what some researchers termed a window area. There you go. An opening between dimensions of reality, so to speak. So is there portals or areas where you can enter another dimension, or the beings from that dimension could enter our dimension? So they took the car and they parked facing a clearing that she could guarantee would produce phenomena worthy of study by their scientific inquiry. At just a few minutes after midnight, a glowing object appeared above a nearly clump of pine trees. So a glowing object appeared near a... It's funny when you read somebody else's writing and the words don't flow. Appeared above a nearly clump of pine trees? What's that? Anyways, when they were halfway across the meadow, two balls of greenish light moved out from the grove of trees and came toward Hank and Ben. The two physicists, seriously educated young men, slowed their pace and gazed cautiously at the lights bobbing near them. Miss Higgins yelled at them that they were being monitored. To their left, they could hear the footprints of unseen entities moving in the trees ahead of them. To their right, they heard what seemed to be the heavy breathing of some gigantic invisible creature. From all around them sounded the mumble of hollow alien voices. So their friend Peter, believing his friends to be in mortal danger, he reached for the steering wheel and sounded the car's horn. So I suppose this startled the UFOs, as the UFOs shot up into the night sky at a rate of speed that their physics could not comprehend. And I'm just reading my highlighted portions. Go buy the book if you find this stuff interesting. It's scared away now, Miss Higgins told them. You might as well call it a night. So they went out to see the, whatever they were, entities. And their buddy freaked out, blew the horn, and the entities took off. On the drive back to town, Peter, who was sitting in the back seat with Ben, began to shout that they were being followed by two glowing green lights. But then the lights whooshed by them, one on either side, and vanished into the darkness. So they made it back to the house. The radio in one of the rooms came on all of its own, and some invisible agency moved the dial from station to station. All the water faucets in the bathroom and in the kitchenette were turned on to full steam. Strange poltergeistic phenomenon kept the men awake until dawn, and according to their testimonies, continued to plague them in their respective home cities for several days after their return. Wow. Another highlighted paragraph here. UFO research can become risky business. One night during their discussion group, this would be a Midwestern Big Ten college, had been a member of a group of serious-minded male students who gathered once a week to discuss politics, philosophy, art, poetry, and women. So one night during their discussion group, someone brought up the subject of UFOs and extraterrestrial life. That very evening, driving back to their respective apartments and houses, 5 of their members, Ron included, witnessed a low overflight of a UFO. 4 nights later, 2 of the 5 spotted another UFO. Then on the next evening, Ron and the other 2 saw a brightly glowing object overhead as they returned from a late movie. So that's interesting. They discuss it during one of their nightly meetings, and all of a sudden, bizarre things start happening. It was not long, Ron stated, before the 5 of them experienced a group sighting. From that evening on, they took to nightly sky watches. We all witnessed UFOs cavorting in the midnight sky, Ron said. On one occasion, I stood within 10 feet of 2 nocturnal lights hovering silently in midair. Later, we heard rappings in the dark, hollow voices, heavy breathing, and the crushing footsteps of unseen entities. Oh my! Freemasonry and Satanism is the series. And apparently these alien creatures, between making agreements with President Eisenhower or Truman, which was it? That they could abduct some humans for experiments in trade for technological knowledge. Is that true or is that not? Satanism and all the rituals of the Illuminati and witchcraft covens, sacrificing human beings during witchcraft holidays, and even in Hitler's diary, sacrificing a young Munich gypsy, bringing forth an entity to impregnate a young girl on the next altar, that Rabbi Marvin Antelman talked about in his 2 books to eliminate the opate, and the opate means the believe in God. So what is reality? That's why I've been doing this little marathon on the Peter Moon Montauk Project, Busiji Mountain, Transylvania Sunrise, Philadelphia Experiment, mind control, abducting young men, throwing them in time portals or other magnetic fields, apparently killing a lot of young men. Sky Spring, HARP systems, Gwen Towers, Jade Helm, putting troops and equipment all over the United States, FEMA camps, hollow point bullets, threats of World War III, plagues, terrorism, financial collapse, global warming, global cooling, climate change, running out of water, crop failures, overpopulation, people fleeing the Middle East or being murdered if they don't flee, going to Europe and the United States, where apparently the authorities will prosecute anyone who speaks negative of the Arabs, that in the next breath they say that are terrorist killers. What is it? Meanwhile, Israel grows like a weed, continuing to take the Palestinians' land, and now apparently all the land around them, from the Euphrates to the Nile. All this biblical prophecy, all this stuff that they say that's going to happen, Armageddon. So I do my research and try to get at the root of what we're talking about. What are these entities that go bump in the night in this book and other books? Aliens, UFOs, terrorists with hoods on, crisis actors, school shootings, church shootings, bombings. What's going on? Meanwhile, back to this book, and then the manifestations turn violent. We all witnessed UFOs cavorting in the midnight sky, Ron said. On one occasion, I stood within 10 feet of two nocturnal lights hovering silently in midair. Later, we heard rappings in the dark, hollow voices, heavy breathing, and crushing footsteps of unseen entities. And then the manifestations turned violent. They swept through one of the group's homes one night, pounding on the walls, yanking ferociously at the bedpost, striking the startled young man in the face, terrorizing his entire family. Within the next few months, the number of harrowing incidents had increased and had expanded to include strange, dark-clad nocturnal visitors. Radio and television sets switched on by themselves. One of the group made the wild claim that he had been teleported one night from his bedroom to the middle of a forest on the outskirts of the city. Ron began sleeping with a .38 special under his pillow. Another of the group invested heavily in weapons and began running with a group that offered sacrifices to Odin. The third was born again into fundamental Christianity. The other two dropped out of college 1 month before they were to have graduated with honors. So I guess running into these entities, whatever they are, aliens, ghosts, spirits, demons, can drive one crazy. In retrospect, Ron questioned whether they had really encountered extraterrestrial phenomenon. I know that we were dealing with some kind of energy. At first I thought it might be from outer space, some alien world. But I thought a lot about the experiences, and I believe that we may somehow have activated some energy that is part of this planet. I think we may have triggered some kind of archetypical pattern within our minds. Even at the Project Montauk, they had some kind of chair the psychic would sit in, and it amplified the guy's psychic abilities, creating the time tunnels and portals, and apparently even bizarre type of monsters out of thin air, using the mind. All right, the discovery of a mysterious object in New Zealand. Just different incidences in Brad Steiger's book with Alfred Bielek and Sherry Hansen Steiger. You can get the book, The Philadelphia Experiment, and Other UFO Conspiracies. So shortly after he turned 17, George had gone on holiday at the beach near the little New Zealand ocean town of Kiawah. He had been swimming around a section of the shoreline, not often penetrated by tourists, when he found a flat, smooth metallic object under a tidal rock. The object was oval-shaped, smooth, rounded at the edges, and engraved with particular symbols. The object weighed about a pound and looked very old. So he took the object home. I'm just going to skip through this page here. And put the object in a drawer for safekeeping. And then he went off to college. And apparently had lost the object. And then the strange things started happening. So he found a mysterious object that has some mysterious symbols on it. So he makes it to some college now, and George was astonished when a teenager stepped to the blackboard and drew the same design that George had first seen on the mysterious object that he had found in New Zealand. The boy smiled at him and then asked him if he knew what the symbols meant. So he goes to college, he winds up being a teacher, and out of nowhere some student walks into his room and draws a picture of the object on the blackboard. And apparently a lot of people showed up at his classroom or called him on the phone and tell them that they wanted the object back, people out of nowhere, and he traveled to another country. I had not been here more than 4 days, he stated, when someone rang my phone and scolded me for taking things that did not belong to me. So there was a couple pages here of all these people calling him up and threatening him, wanting this object back. The incredible Philadelphia experiment conspiracy. So we've been going over that. The experiment began as an attempt to develop radar invisibility, the ultimate camouflage to protect U.S. ships from Nazi and Japanese submarines. Fair enough? Then, according to the accounts, the destroyer Eldridge became completely invisible. And what's more, accomplished teleportation. So that was an accident. They weren't prepared for that. The crewmen and the ship's officers would be forever trapped in hellish torment. So when the ship did return, it drove the men insane and some other bizarre phenomena. Horribly, a number of the crew burst into flames on spontaneous human combustion. Others had portions of their bodies frozen into the steel structures of the destroyer. Of the officers and men who somehow managed to survive, they spent the remainder of their lives committed to psychiatric wards, mental institutions. Researchers have continued to receive accounts from eyewitnesses of the experiment and those who claim to be survivors of crewmen consigned to ashes in asylums. Then in September 1989, Dr. Alfred Bielek, a physicist and former Navy seaman, stepped before a large audience and gathered Phoenix for Timothy Green Beckley's UFO New Age conference and informed them that he had survived time warping, teleportation, and electromagnetic zapping, and to have at last emerged from a period of brainwashing to tell his incredible story. So what I've been doing while I'm reading these books is I went on YouTube and looked up Peter Moon, Preston Nichols, Al Beback, Duncan Cameron, Brad Steiger, and I've been watching the videos trying to get an overall feel for this topic, to become a sort of an expert on it. And it's been working. I'm a lot more knowledgeable. And I had these books years ago and I read them, but it doesn't really sink in until you read it again and research it, and watch the videos and listen to all the other people's stories. For example, I know as bizarre as this sounds, I went on the computer to get something very current from the National UFO Reporting Center. It has 132 pages of sightings. I only got printed out 3 for the last 3 months. The NUFORC, on the bottom there, the website. Sightings of UFOs, current. Week ago, December 21st. Strange light hovered over Gardner, North Carolina. I only did North Carolina. They had a big list of every state and how many sightings each state had. The National UFO Reporting Center. All right, 12/19, Elizabeth City, fireball, multiple flying objects sighted on the horizon. Raleigh, North Carolina, formation, 3 objects with white and red collision lights followed each other north Raleigh, no sound. Mooresville, December 13th, 10 minutes, meandering lights over Mooresville. 12/13, meandering lights over Mooresville. Wilmington, a light in the sky went up slowly over the trees, then a beam of light came out, then I ran into the house to get the phone. Troutman, North Carolina. Diamond-shaped UFO with red lights, 1217. Fayetteville, strange light near Rim Road and Cliffdale. Buxton, triangle. We went out to look at the stars over the water on a crystal clear night when we saw to the left of us 3 bright light red strobing lights. Holly Springs. While walking my dog, I noticed a propeller plane I thought was coming in for a landing. It had white lights and a red flashing on the beam. Pittsburgh, bright light with irregular flight pattern and speed. Morehead City, strange light with geometric shape. Wilmington, bright light close to Earth fades red and disappears on the right side of the sky. Another guy in Wake Forest on November 26th. Just saw something really weird. 6 to 8 orange light traveling east to west. They seem to be less than 1,000 feet in altitude. And another one, the last one I'll read here. I was driving down Peters Creek Parkway and noticed an oval-shaped object with lights all around it, most white, and maybe 1 or 2. So there's a couple more pages here. Just thought it might be wise to see what's going on currently. What kind of creatures are out there? Chapter 3 on this book. Ever since organized flying saucer research began in the early 1950s, a lot of this started happening after World War II. After the Philadelphia experiment, when the ship disappeared and reappeared. A disturbing number of serious UFO investigators have suffered personal harassment, unusual accidents, and even mysterious deaths. In some cases, sinister voices have whispered threats over the telephone and warned certain researchers to terminate specific investigations. UFOologists have been visited by ominous strangers who have made it physically and painfully clear that their orders to discontinue all UFO investigations would be violently enforced. Oh my. It was September 1953 that 3 agents of a silence group made their first in-person visit. Albert Bender, who had organized an international flying saucer bureau, was their target. According to late ufologist Gary Barker, Bender had received certain data which he felt provided the missing pieces for a theory concerning the origin of flying saucers. The 3 men in black told Bender that among the many saucer researchers, he had been the one to stumble upon the correct answer to the flying saucer enigma. Then they filled him in on the details. Bender became ill. He was unable to eat for 3 days. So what did they tell him that caused him to not be able to eat for 3 days? UFO investigators Dominic Luisi and August Roberts called on Bender and encouraged him to break his silence concerning the mysterious men in black. They were pretty rough on me, Bender told them. Bender went on to say that when people found out the truth about flying saucers, there would be dramatic changes in all things. Science especially would suffer a major blow. Political structures would topple. Mass confusion would reign. In 1962, Bender declared that he would at last tell the story to the world in Flying Saucers and 3 Men. This perplexing volume served only to confuse serious researchers, as it told of Bender's astral projection to a secret underground base in Antarctica, that was manned by male, female, and bisexual creatures. Bisexual creatures. And then, of course, we're talking about the homosexual agenda and the destruction of Christianity. It just makes one wonder, what the heck is going on here? Who are these creatures? Interdimensional beings? The demons, unclean spirit mentioned in the Bible? Aliens from space? Reptilians? That David Icke talks about, and many others? Seeing some of the famous people in the world, as Arizona Wilder talks about in her interview with David Icke, you can look up, where they have these Illuminati witchcraft type ceremonies where they sacrifice people, drink their blood, eat their flesh, enough to scare us all. What is reality? With the World War I, World War II, Vietnam War, Korea War, Middle East, 9/11, Oklahoma City bombing, crisis actors and all these other terrorist shootings, seemingly planned to sway public opinion so they can bring about a new world order and new age. Just saying. And all the prophecy out there. On June 24th, 1967, Dominic Luigi said that Bender seemed to be a changed man after the three men in black had visited him. It was as if he had been lobotomized. Luigi said he was scared and he would later suffered from tremendous headaches, which he said were controlled by them. Whenever he would think of breaking his silence, one of these terrific headaches would just about knock him out. Then I'm thinking about TIs, targeted individuals. I know one friend of mine that says that she's a targeted individual. And if you go on Miles Johnston, the Basis series, you'll hear a lot about targeted individual. And apparently that Arizona Wilder interview with David Icke was a targeted individual. Kathy O'Brien, targeted individual. A lot of people who escaped from the Illuminati and tell all on YouTube videos were targeted individuals. Least we forget about lots of people who were studying vaccines are now dead. Biologists dead. Astronomers dead. Scientists dead. Witnesses and other things, whistleblowers dead. Military men let go by the Obama administration who would not go along with certain plans that the government has spoken about. What's up? What do these mysterious entities have to do with it? Some people say there are entities that live in the planet, and I have something else to share in future videos, I will. But apparently, in the Pisgah Forest here in North Carolina mountains, there's an underground base like Area 51. And Mary Joyce, look up her name, in Pisgah Forest, talks all about it in some videos and a website. So we need to investigate that further. But apparently a little bit west of me, about an hour, a lot of people are seeing sightings of UFOs often. And other strange anomalies near this place that has 2 high-powered telescopes. And you can't get in, only by invitation. At least we forget the telescopes in Arizona that's owned by the Vatican, named Lucifer. What's with that? All right, moving on. In my opinion, Luigi said, the men in black are representatives of an organization on this planet, but they are not from any known bureau of our government. I believe both these men and the UFOs come from the same civilization, which has flourished in a remote area of Earth, such as the Amazon, the North Gobi Desert, or the Himalayan mountains. It is possible that these underground civilizations... So it's getting crazy here. Within a few months after Bender had been silenced, Edgar Gerald, organizer of the Australian Flying Saucer Bureau, and Harold Fulton, head of the Civilian Saucer Investigation of New Zealand, received visits from mysterious strangers and subsequently disbanded their organizations. Here we go again. John Stewart, a New Zealander, picked up a piece of metal that had fallen from a UFO during a close sighting in February 1955. The next night he received a visit from a man dressed in black who announced that he had more right than Stewart did to the piece of gray-white metal. The men in black told Stewart about flying saucers. Too much, maybe, for my own personal safety, Stewart wrote Gary Barker. It is easy to understand, I think, why he told me what he did, Stewart wrote. It was meant to scare the hell out of me. And it did. Again, what's going on here? These are the people, our governments are aware of this. The Vatican's aware of this. The Zionists are aware of this stuff. The Illuminati Freemasons are aware of this stuff. And we citizens are being kept in the dark. What's real? What's not real? That's why I read these books and make the videos. So we can ponder it and think about it. Discuss it. Maybe figure it out. And there is a comment section at the bottom of this video on YouTube. If you got any information, you've seen something, leave me a note. I have a lot of people sending me information all the time. The investigation is expanding. Some researchers feel that certain of their fellows may have ignored the threats of the silencers and paid the ultimate price for their bravery. Astrophysicist Morris Jessup, the guy we've been talking about, who wrote the book, The Case for the UFOs, which was returned to the Navy, marked up by apparently 3 aliens. Also, Morris Jessup received some letters from Carlos Allende, and hence this book is called The Allende Letters, and the Vero edition of the book, The Case for UFOs. Opened up a whole can of worms. A lot of people discussing the disappearance of the USS Eldridge in the Philadelphia experiment. Also called the Phoenix Experiment and the Rainbow Project. Phoenix Project and Rainbow Project. Astrophysicist Morris Jessup had been vitally interested in UFO research. Received an unusual series of letters concerning flying saucers, secret Navy experiments, disappearing ships, and invisible men from a mysterious correspondent who signed himself as Carlos Allende. If you've been watching this little marathon of videos, we've gone over quite a few books. Thought maybe I'd do a little recap, starting with series number 73, Transylvania Sunrise. Where apparently in the Busiji Mountain, they found this facility protected by a force field with chairs and tables that only a giant could sit in, and high-tech holographic equipment. You could push a button and it would show the history of Earth. An interesting book. And apparently they think this guy here is an old sphinx. I don't know if I got these in correct order. But then we looked at the Black Sun, the Nazi connection. It's like a cult, like the Illuminati. And apparently it involves flying saucers. I think we'll be doing more videos on this book. 1 or 2 more. And then, of course, Montauk Revisited, Adventures in Synchronicity. Coincidences. That's where they had that chair where they were abducting young boys and opening up portals and creating all kinds of psychic events, experimenting on those thousands of young boys they abducted, pushing them into time tunnels, they say, never able to retrieve them. And maybe interdimensional space. floating endlessly in nothingness. Just trying to figure out what's going on. The Philadelphia experiment murder. We made a video on this, probably make another one. I'm just mixing it up. Invisible Horizons, that was the last one I just did. One video, maybe another one. The Montauk Project. We did one video so far. Again, that's at the end of Long Island. Apparently these Philadelphia experiment opened up some doors to different kinds of science when that ship disappeared. And the people, when it came back, were half in and half out of the bulkhead. Stuff the government was into, or the people who control the government. But they would like to weaponize this kind of technology to control the planet with the New World and the New Age. And then another one we recently did, I guess the last one, the Philadelphia Experiment, Project Invisibility. So my point to all this is, and then I have another book we haven't looked at yet, Blue Blood, True Blood, and I may have some other ones. And in Blue Blood, True Blood, I just saw a couple pictures here. Some kind of creatures. We will be discussing. Again, what's out there? What is going on? Might behoove us to be aware. So, mysterious men in black. Then we moved on to Morris Jessup, who had been vitally interested in UFO research, received those letters from Carlos Allende. Jessup pursued his independent research into the flying saucer puzzle. The astrophysicist, smarter guy than me. I'm an electronic technician. I worked at a major aerospace company for 10 years. And a computer guy, writing software, electronic expert. And a man who has spent a good portion of his life studying, reading books. So Mr. Jessup, Morris, was found dead in his automobile outside a park in Florida, an alleged suicide. So we've been reading about that in the other books on this particular marathon series, Peter Moon, Philadelphia Experiment, Time Tunnels, Abducting Boys, Mind Control, Project Montauk, at the end of Long Island, the Nazis, the Black Sun, Transylvania Sunrise, the underground facility. And we know that there's underground facilities all over the planet, if you've been any kind of a researcher. The Dulce place in New Mexico. I drove out there. I was at Santa Fe for a while. In Santa Fe for about 6 months. Went to Roswell. I got pictures of me going there, going to the museum. Got a couple of aliens, one on each arm, and had somebody take a picture of me with them. Fake, stuffed aliens. Not real aliens. But it was a kind of an interesting museum. Alright, until his death in 1977, Ray Palmer edited Flying Saucers, Search and Space World from a small but impressive publishing company in Amherst, Wisconsin. Just reading my highlighted portions here and adding a little my commentary to the conversation. Get the book. I'd like to motivate people to look into this stuff. Be aware of this stuff. I think it's very important. A lot of people say they're going to create some kind of fake alien invasion to bring about the New World Order. Project Bluebeam, where they have these laser beams that can cause holographic images in the sky. You think you're going to see Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad, whatever, or aliens. Freak out the whole world. They wrote about the Dero, D-E-R-O, evil cave culture aliens. Once nearly got your life, and that you live a life of perpetual and terrible pain that never subsides for a second. You also wrote, I know the Dero are real, and I know what they can do. Oh my. What are the Dero? They live in the ground. What are these mysterious things we're talking about? Is all this stuff fabrication? All these books I've been going over, all the books I'm going to go over. If it is all lies and fabrication and propaganda and deception, that's concerning. If it isn't, that's concerning. Either way, it's concerning. Might behoove us to wake up. I think there are strong link-ups with psychism in the flying saucer mystery. I think so too. The psychic phenomenon, telepathy, telekinesis, being able to move things with your mind, clairvoyance, being able to see into the future, table wrappings, where you have a medium bring forth an entity from the other side. I think it has everything to do with the UFO alien things and the biblical thing. Some people call out Jesus' name when they're being abducted, and the alien drops them like a hot potato. So I've studied and seen in videos and material. Is it true? I think there is a great deal of psychic deception going on. But who is practicing such deception? That is the problem. Hence my series, Freemasonry and Satanism. Satanism, Satan is the great deceiver. The murder and mayhem, Aleister Crowley, communicating with a higher being called Hiowas, the god of war and vengeance, who tells him to write the book of the law, do as thou wilt. There are no rules. You can do anything you want. Child abuse, stealing, murder, lying, cheating, anything you want. And the creature looked like this in Aleister Crowley's drawing. And he was known as the evilest man alive, and changed the spelling of his name so that it would equal 666, the mark of the beast. Just saying, you can't make this stuff up. If you've been watching my videos, you hear this stuff a lot. That's why I say it a lot. So people will look it up. If I'm wrong on anything, point it out. All right. My experience with the Dero took place when I was still editing Fate in Evanston, Illinois. One night we had a very hard rainstorm and the drain in the basement plugged up. I was wading around in the water trying to unstop the drain when suddenly felt myself being lifted high into the air, helpless. So something lifted him high into the air while he was in the basement trying to unstop a plugged drain. A lot of water was accumulating in his cellar. I hung suspended for just a moment. Then I was slammed down to the basement floor with great force. I was paralyzed as a result of this attack, and I most certainly do bear the effects of this paralysis to this day. I am not certain what attacked me, but I am certain it was no accident. The intelligence arm of a large and hostile group. Another headline. In an open letter to all UFO researchers, John Keel set forth his opinion that the men in black are the intelligence arm of a large and possible hostile group. That'd be the Illuminati and the other mystery school of Babylon cults, like called the Hidden Hand, where you can see these famous people and their hand hidden in their jacket or shirt. Bohemian Grove, they have a big fire with a giant owl, throwing a baby into the fire, cremation of care. Our famous politicians and leaders have been photographed there. Bilderberger Group, Club of Rome, Zionist Jesuits, and all the other occultic organizations, Masonic lodges in every community all over the world. Illuminati, occultists, witchcraft covens everywhere, sacrificing people that they abduct. Just saying. Let's tell it all if we're going to tell it. The intelligence arm of a large and hostile group. After discussing various types of contact, Keel went on to say that he considered the men in black to be a professional terrorist. And I noticed a lot of these terrorist situations over there in the Middle East, and including other countries recently in Paris. These men wear these hoods. I don't think it's what they're telling us. Again, it's created events to create fear in the public, to bring about this new world order. And among their many duties is the harassment of UFO researchers who have become involved in cases that might reveal too much of the truth. Keel's pursuit of the silencers led him to uncover some extreme cases of personal abuse in which certain contactees or investigators have been kidnapped by 3 men in a black car. The researcher notes that it is nearly always 3 men who subject the victim to some sort of brainwashing technique that leaves him in a strange state of nausea, mental confusion, or even amnesia, lasting for several days. All such victims have a black eye when released. Keel writes, which suggests that physical contact of a violent nature is a necessity part of brainwashing treatment. And that is part of the stuff we learn about Montauk Project and MK Ultra and Illuminati escapees who tell all that beating the dickens out of somebody in horrific fashions causes them to put a mind block, go out of their mind, where then these powerful people in the government, or aliens, whatever they are, demonic beings, can program these people into mind slaves. And as I've been saying, with the radio towers, microwave transmitters, and the digital TVs now, laptops, and other types of cell phone technologies, with these different frequency controls, how far have they advanced? What kind of threat is this to we the people? Sky spraying of chemicals in the sky? HARP systems, Gwen towers, I keep saying all this stuff. Billboards, magazine articles. It's meant to sway and program the mind. And you can see it in the public when you go walk down the city street. People standing in line to get tattooed when they have economic problems. Isn't there something wrong with that? And they dress up like zombies, like Pokemon, if you remember that. Is there something wrong with that? And the viciousness of TV shows and movies. It has to affect the mind. The cartoons that the kids watch. Oh my. Do you ever sit down and listen to those little characters talking to your kids? If you did, you wouldn't let them watch it. Mind control. Alright, so all such victims had a black eye when released, which suggests the physical contact in a violent nature is a necessary part of brainwashing treatment. I'm thinking waterboarding in Cuba and so much more horrific torture of people. Why? They have drugs, truth serums they could inject these people with. But I think there's something more sinister afoot. And the people who are doing it enjoy torturing people. They feed off of it like some kind of psychopathic nut. Like the leaders of many of the world's governments. What did they say that Benjamin Netanyahu said in Fink's Bar? Go look it up. We hate America, he says. We're going to sell that country off piece by piece. Benjamin Netanyahu, Fink's Bar. And if anybody can show me that it's propaganda, false, lie, let me know. But my research shows me that it's somebody turned on a tape recorder and got them. Like Prime Minister Sharon of Israel, in a heated argument in his Congress in Israel, when some people were complaining, we can't keep killing those Palestinians or taking the land, something like that. Anyways, he got angry and he says, don't worry about the USA. We control the USA. So who are we to believe? Benjamin Netanyahu and Prime Minister Sharon of Israel? Are we to open our minds and believe this stuff is real? The stuff I'm reading here? And if it is, what can we do about it? What should we do about it? And if reality is created by what we think, and they're trying to change what we think, then we will create our own new reality if we let them program our minds. I'll stick with God, and I believe in Jesus and the things he said to treat your fellow man as you would want to be treated. Whether they're religious or not, I have that philosophy anyways. I would rather treat people like I would like to be treated. Forget religion. The 10 Commandments from Moses. Don't kill. Don't steal. Don't do adultery. Don't covet. Don't bear false witness. Whether there was or was not a religion, I think those are common sense rules. And then the government's creating this biodiversity programs, Agenda 21, sustainability, global warming hoaxes, and terrorism hoaxes, all so they can take control of the human population that they allow to live. That's the truth. Anybody looking into this, look behind me. I got 10 bookcases full of books. I could bring 100 of them to this camera and show them, and I will. We are now on a vicious merry-go-round, and we are caught in the middle of a bizarre conflict. Contacts are being made and suppressed on a dizzying scale. Information is being gained and lost at an ever-increasing rate. What's going on with the people citing these mysterious things? Underground cities and books I've gone over. Just take a look at a couple books for a second. Maybe I can make a quick point. En route to global occupation. Tex Mars, Dark Majesty. The Secret Brotherhood and the Magic of 1,000 Points of Light. Didn't George Bush say 1,000 points of light, and out of chaos and anarchy will come the New World Order? Look up Tex Mars' website. America's Secret Establishment, Order of the Skull and Bones. Anthony Sutton, famous author. Flying Serpents and Dragons, the story of mankind's reptilian past. We've made a video on this book. Ratzinger, the Pope that just stepped down. Why did he step down? And why do we have now a Jesuit Pope? And the Jesuits are the military arm of the church, Rome Church, Catholic Church. And I grew up Catholic. And this guy was supposed to be being prosecuted for some kinds of evil crimes. And he stepped down. I've read some of this book. They're changing their story. After the Crusades and they kill all those people who wouldn't go to Jesus, now they're saying you don't have to go to Jesus. Why did all those people die then? The kingdom of evil. We've got some serious research to do here with my videos. The kingdom of evil. The Oklahoma City bombing. I've read this. In my opinion, Mr. McVeigh was a CIA or FBI inside informant being paid. And weren't there a child center in this building and FBI files and everything that were destroyed? Investigations? Lots of mysteries. Who really owns your gold? Who owns everything? 911 Synthetic Terror. Look at the page marks I put in here. Leaves very little doubt that the administration in charge of our government, the Bush administration, was up to some serious no good. I mean, Dick Cheney was in charge of the government that day, turned off the National Air Defense System. George Bush was reading My Pet Goat, a little book to kids in Florida. Strange goings on. And I've gone over these books. We'll be going over these again. But Henry Ford, automaker, bought a newspaper, the Dearborn Independent, because the Illuminati-controlled, Zionist-controlled, secret cabal that runs our world into Luciferian religion, the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill. Anyways, their owned media, they won't publish the truth. So Henry Ford sticks his neck out, buys a newspaper, and starts publishing this stuff. And I've got volume 2. The International Jew, the world's foremost problem. I didn't make this up. Look what it says on there. The world's foremost problem. People who want to take over the world. And we went over a lot of videos on Zionism and the Talmud, series number 66 to 71. Many books exposing everything. And volume 3, Jewish Influences in American Life. This was Jewish activities in the United States. And Jewish Influences in American Life, Henry Ford, the world's foremost problem. And we know there's only Anti-Defamation League and other PACs that control our politicians are all Jewish organizations. No other country has all this stuff. Aspects of Jewish power in the United States, number 4. The International Jew, the world's foremost problem. So they worship Lucifer, the Talmud, the devil. And then we looked at this here before, the meditation occult room of the United Nations. Beware of the trilaterals. Trilateral organizations. I think I've gone over this. We'll be reviewing this stuff. I could spend years reviewing all this stuff. The ultimate weapon, terrorist and world order. And we talked about Rabbi Marvin Antelman, Jewish guy, famous author, head of the Jewish Congress of the United States. Not just anybody. To eliminate the opate, that means to believe in God, volume 1 and volume 2. 2 books. He's the one who talks about Hitler and Hitler's diary and bringing forth this being by sacrificing in Munich, Germany, a young gypsy man to impregnate the young girl at the altar to bring forth some kind of supreme beings. Have anything to do with this and Aleister Crowley? Another one here, the United Nations, the Cult of the All-Seeing Eye. Well, I got 2 copies of that. I don't even know what I have with all these books. 2 different editions here. The Freemason's Key, a study of Masonic symbolism. And by another Jewish famous author, PhD, Henry Macau, Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. Just trying to make a point here. If there are these aliens of this book I'm going over, and I'll continue, beings who are even making agreements with our leaders to abduct people in exchange for technologies, and it's obvious the governmental powers, including the United Nations, wants a new world order with the material we've gone over in biodiversity, pollution, global warming, global cooling, climate change, sustainability, overpopulation, and Fukushima spreading all that toxic fluids, radiation all over the Pacific, and so much more secrecy, and people being killed and government officials being let go of their jobs because they won't shoot at the American people. What does it have to do with these aliens? Here's a book we got to go over. The Mark of the Beast. Then we have my first video ever was on this book. The Holy Bible, the Masonic edition. The Freemasons. Look at the symbols in this book. Look at the rays of sun on the top. And all these the Tower of Babylon on the right there. So they could reach up to God. This is all in the Bible. And let there be light. Egyptian symbols. King Solomon's temple in this Bible. And the word masonry. The Bible and King Solomon's temple in masonry. What's that all about? They control all our politicians and have offices all over the world. We've gone over that. The Holy Bible, the great light in masonry. They control all these wars. The Illuminati controls them. They're in this all together. They get 30 degrees. The tradition of Solomon. See, this all has to do with rebuilding King Solomon's temple, putting the Israeli, Zionist, Jewish people in charge of the whole world. When we run over the Talmud, it says the best of the Goyim shall be killed. So I could go over this stuff here. They even have little pictures of King Solomon's temple here. A bird's eye view, King Solomon's temple. So again, as I keep saying, what's going on? What's this have to do with aliens, demonic beings, coils of the serpent? Just went to one shelf on one of my bookcases and just pulled off a bunch of books. Didn't hand select these. The Jews of Khazaria. We got a lot of books to go over here. In the Bible in Revelations, it says Jews who call themselves Jews but are not. Okay, who are they? Is it the Jews of Khazaria? And if it is, do they have any different DNA or propensity of behavior than the rest of us? Apparently they do. The Israel test. I read this book a little bit, and I can't stomach it. They say that they have done everything, and we, the people, should be on our knees thanking them for everything that's ever been done in history. And that Star of David there on their flag matches King Solomon's ring that he used to call forth demons, and that's how he got his power. Secret Societies and Subversive Movements by Nesta Webster. More books we have to go over. Just making a point here. There's something going on behind the scenes. And again, World Revolution. I read Nesta Webster's this book a long time ago. Very enlightening book. Actually, I think I read the one about the French Revolution. I have to read this one. I read this one here, John Quincy Adams, President of the United States. He tells all. They used to, in the past, they didn't have the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. They had the Mason Party and the Anti-Mason Party. The Masons, Lucifer is their deity, the devil, and the Anti-Masons were the Christian Party. A lot of people don't know that. And way back then, the Masons made an agreement that never again would they allow non-Masons into the politics of the USA, the Senate or the House of Representatives. I wonder if they've actually achieved that. We know that most of our presidents are related to each other. And as President Roosevelt said, presidents aren't elected, they are selected. And then we went over this book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, by John Perkins, where apparently these elitists who control our world sent people to all these Iran's King of Kings. Anyways, they sent people from the people who control the world, the banksters, to governments all over the world to borrow money that they couldn't pay back, promising them that would increase their GNP, gross national product, but knowing that they would default and fall under the New World Order in control of the United Nations and the World Bank and the IMF Fund, Federal Reserve, etc., etc., etc. Confessions of an Economic Hitman. They're bringing the world down to its knees with the economy. We all know that. ClimateGate, Project Bluebeam, the marijuana conspiracy. The back of this says, how did it happen that we, Homo sapiens, have so easily, readily, and even happily brought into the suicidal idea of living thoughtlessly, without thinking? That's why I do these videos. So many people just aren't thinking. We've got used to believe that the world belongs to abstractions such as governments, the rich, the United Nations. But no, it does not. The world belongs to the individuals, to each and every human being, to you and to me. But see, most people won't believe that now. When they take the guns, it'll be all over. Council of Foreign Relations, Bilderbergers, Triadalists, and other destructive forces create problems and then themselves propose to solutions. So they're creating the very problems that they're trying to solve to fool us. And I'm remembered of the protection rackets in the early 20s and 30s, like in Chicago or New York. They would come in and smash your window or beat you up. Some guys would, that they would send. And then these guys with nice ties would come in and say, pay us money every week, every month, and we'll protect you. This is a big racket. You had to pay protection money every week, every month. That's what they're doing now. But their solutions are even more destructive than problems. And it cannot be otherwise, because whatever the problem is, you are the only solution. This selection of articles from the Dot Connector magazine is all about the problems are artificially created and how you can not only solve them naturally, but create the world without problems at all. This is your world. And I'm saying this to anybody watching my videos. This is your world. We can't let these other people ruin our world. Whether they're aliens, beings that have been here all along, sinister demonic devils, whatever. And then, of course, I got this Masonry, Captain Morgan. So Captain Morgan, back when they swore allegiance to not divulge anything that goes on in those Masonic lodges, under threat of death, told all they abducted him and murdered him in a horrendous fashion. It was a United States-wide scandal. Masonry was in the toilet for years. One of the things they created was, I understand from my research, was to save the whole programs, was to create the Mormon Association, the Mormons, because the Freemasons took a big hit after this murder of Captain Morgan and the government cover-up. Reagan, triadalism, and the neoliberals, containment and intervention in the 1980s. This stuff has been going on for a long time. Reagan, triadalism, and the neoliberals, now they call it the neoconservatives, they're fooling us. It's important reading for people who want to get in touch with the reality behind our foreign policy and the forces driving the country. Schuyler shows the intervention and militarism are symptomatic of U.S. policy. We all know that by now. Not something that begins with Reagan or ends with him. We all know that by now. It isn't Obama. It isn't Bush. It isn't Hillary or any of them. It's the puppet masters behind them. The Masons, the Illuminati. The people who sent the economic hitmans all over the country. John Quincy Adams, President of the United States, read his letters. Nestor Webster, World Revolution. It's all planned, our destruction. Eustace Mullins, this is one of my favorite authors. I read all his stuff. Look at this. He talks about the Rockefellers from the 1920s up to today, taking over the medical establishment and forcing fluoride in the water in all the towns and cities all over the USA. And as we all know now, much more worse things are done by these Illuminati characters, from the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Chases, Morgans, and related to the presidents that are elected and all the bought and paid for politicians. This is a fantastic read. Murder by injection. They're poisoning us with toxins and other harmful radiations and making a bundle of money off with the pharmaceutical companies and the hospitals, etc., etc., etc. So while I was reading that book, this one, just thought it might behoove us to look and see some of the other material. Probably got 10 shelves right that way. There's a bookcase behind me and 3 bookcases I'm facing. We only went over 1 row of books, and there are 6 rows right there in front of me in this room. In another room, I have another couple of bookcases. In another room, I have another couple of bookcases. I could have went on any one of those shelves and grabbed any row of books, and we would be learning some bizarre information that it might behoove us to wake up and realize is out there, and that we need to use our brains to solve these problems. These people running our world now aren't going to solve the problems. They're going to make them worse because they have a purpose, a goal. It's the New Age, the New World Order. And it's satanic and luciferic in nature. Maybe it involves some kind of reptilian creatures and gray aliens. But that's why I'm going over these books. Maybe we can figure it out. All right, so Mr. Keel, back to this book, in his address before the National UFO Conference, Keel told of his personal mission to track down the silencers, the people trying to shut up everybody. He said that dark-complexioned, mysterious men had sometimes silenced saucer sighters before the witnesses had time to report the sightings. How do they know that? On occasion, Keel said, he had arrived on the scene within moments after the mysterious silencers had departed. According to Keel, the men in black visited and silenced 8 communities in Washington in May 1967. Several homes in Long Island were unwilling hosts to the silencers in June of the same year. Keel also noted a large number of dog kidnappings occurring at the time the men in black were calling upon saucer sighters. The UFOs don't want us to know where they are from. Keel stated, they have been lying to contactees since 1897. 1897. Keel explained this reference by stating that the first men in black may have appeared in Texas in 1897, when, according to newspaper accounts, some pottery had fallen from a mysterious airship. The next day, dark-suited men of Oriental complexion arrived in town and bought up the strange fragments. Crazy? Continuing on with this book review, The Philadelphia Experiment and Other UFO Conspiracies, Brad Steiger, with Alfred Bielek and Sherry Hansen Steiger. And it's January 4th, 2016. The reason for these book reviews and all my research is fairly simple. What the heck is going on in the world? Seems like some strange things going on. Anyways, at page 25, the Pentagon position on the silencers. How does the United States government feel about the silencers? The men in black shutting up people who have seen UFOs or aliens, and the investigators. No government agent is empowered to demand surrender of private property by any law-abiding citizen. Well, if you've been doing any research at all, seems like they're confiscating evidence all the time. People who are investigating things mysteriously die. 911. And so much more. Maybe one day we could trust the government, but there seems to be a lot of mafia types in positions of power these days. Especially the one-worlders, one-world government, one-world currency, one-world religion, all with a little flavor of Satanism involved. Hence, I do these book reviews. So people can think, I can think, and maybe we can solve the problem. Colonel Friedman went on to say that by posing as Air Force officers and government agents, the silencers are committing a federal offense. We would like to catch one, he told John Keel. Unfortunately, the trail is always too cold by the time we hear about these cases. But we're still trying. So there are plenty of good people still in powerful places of the government, the military, Air Force, Navy, CIA, police departments, etc. But like we have with Obama having these people removed, you just got to wonder, who are they replacing them with? Who? Pursuit by government agencies has done little to slow down the activities of the silencers. The people who would shut up, people who are trying to tell the truth. Moving on here, page 26. In the spring of 1967, 4 bogus Air Force officers assembled policemen and civilians who had witnessed heavy UFO activity in Wanacue, New Jersey, and told them that they hadn't seen a thing. We don't care what you've seen, you haven't seen a thing. Sternly, the citizens of Wanacue were admonished not to discuss the sightings over the Wanacue Reservoir with anyone. What's with that? California Rex Heflin managed to take some highly interesting photos of a UFO while performing his duties with the Highway Department. A few days later, Heflin was visited by a man bearing credentials of the North American Air Defense. The phony NORAD investigator demanded and received Heflin's original series of pictures. On April 1966, 2 Norwalk, Connecticut schoolboys were pursued by a low-flying UFO. The next day, a man appeared at the boys' school and introduced himself to the principal as a representative of the government agency, so secret that he couldn't give his name. The mysterious agent questioned the boys for nearly 3 hours. That's why we do book reviews. Find this information out. I don't want to do an audiobook. I'm not reading everything. If you think it's interesting, find the book. Start your own collection. And write a book. Or make a video. Before he became interested in UFOs, Edwards had been conducting a highly successful radio show sponsored by the American Federation of Labor. He was warned to abandon the subject of flying saucers. This would be the silencing of Frank Edwards. Edwards persisted and was giving his walking papers. Edwards said that he later learned that his constant mention of UFOs had irritated the Defense Department and that the department had brought pressure to bear on the AFL. The American Federation of Labor. Edwards was only temporarily silenced. He soon had a syndicated radio show that dealt almost exclusively with flying saucers and other phenomena. News of the sudden death of Frank Edwards stunned delegates assembled in 1967. Congress of Scientific UFOologists in New York City's Hotel Commodore on June 24th. The thoughts of several flying saucer researchers turned at once to the silencers. Edwards was warned to lay off UFO investigation. One delegate suggested he had been visited by the same three men in black that shut up the Albert K. Bender. Moving on, Men in Black versus UFOologists. Jack Robinson, who was at one time before his passing assistant editor of Saucer News, and said on 2 occasions an electronic type voice, definitely not human, had told me to stop all saucer research. It sounded like a strange kind of voice that might be produced by a Vaughter machine. Each time the phone calls have come, the message has been the same: stop all saucer research. Well-known ufologist Timothy Green Beckley commented, "I have never received other than kooks calls myself, but I am currently investigating 2 cases that involve dark-complexioned men who have silenced flying saucer sighters in Oregon and in Texas." So he says the only calls he ever had were from kooks. Howard Menger, who claims to have been inside a saucer and to have talked with aliens, said that when I was living in High Bridge, New Jersey in 1957, 2 men in dark business suits came to call on me. They flashed authentic-looking credentials and claimed to be agents from a government bureau. Interesting. They warned me to quit talking about flying saucers and to drop my research. We had quite an argument, and they claimed to have considerable power. Just reading my highlighted portions. Not all of it. These imposters visit people who have been contacted by or seen flying saucers. They come into a sighter's or a contactee's home and take any films that might have been made of flying saucers. They state that the film will be developed by government labs. In October 1966 issue of Flying Saucers, Ray Palmer ran the story, "Navy Claps Saucer Sighters in Psychiatric Ward." Wow. You start telling people about flying saucers that you see them. Back in '66, they would have put you in a mental institution. This article detailed the plight of seamen Gary Stephen Trent and Charles Lester Niebeck, Jr., who were reassigned to Ward T11 and the Philadelphia Naval Hospital after spotting UFOs in the spring of 1966. The organization beams down to contactees' TV set. The Organization. Who is the organization? Added to this phenomenon have been reports of contact via television. A number of individuals who have cited UFOs have claimed later communication with aliens known as the organization through their home television sets. The organization frequently disrupts normal programming to allow robed figures to instruct the saucer sighters to cooperate with the organization and to keep their information confidential. In exchange for the saucer sighters' silence and cooperation, the organization promises him that he will be allowed to work with them on certain glorious secret projects for the betterment of mankind. Wow. Thinking now of these masters that the Albert Pike or Aleister Crowley or Helena Blavatsky are talking to on the other side. Always talking about betterment of mankind. Whether such stories are born of individual delusion or organized deception, reports of these communications have been received from nearly every section of the United States. Here is a typical report of such a contact. Now to the organization. I have been working for them for 4 years. They first contacted me right after I had 2 unusual UFO sightings. One in which 3 large, blue, glowing saucers landed near my home. Later, I went up to the site and found landing gear depressions. And the next following Sunday, when I saw a huge silver saucer, which hovered 20 feet above me and seemed to be taking my picture. Well, these organizations want to involve this guy above here with certain glorious secret projects for the betterment of mankind. Sounds like a little bit of a deception to me. Next, you ask how they contacted me. They had made and perfected a magnetic frequency equal to the VHF station on TV. And so one night when they were ready, I was at home watching TV. They cut in on channel 3 and cut off the normal transmission by means of direct beam transmitted to me. Using the magnetic wave principle, they told me how to construct an MG transmitter of my own. So we believe this stuff. This particular contactee identified the organization as a United Planets Council. Wow, remember the books I went over with the Palladians? Coming here to fix problems they made thousands of years ago when they made some changes in humanity's history. And more sex will help you evolve to a higher consciousness. That's what the New Age teaches. The Kundalini. And especially, apparently, satanic homosexual sex. The Kundalini. That's why I do these book reviews. Some strange things that people think, people have been told, people believe. According to him, their saucers have been landing on Earth for thousands of years. Here you go. Their saucers have been landing on Earth for thousands of years. They're studying Earth and waiting until Earth can put spaceships on the moon. Then Earth will be asked to join the UPC, United Planets Council. I'm thinking New Age and New World Order. Science will have advanced tremendously. Those who put credence in such reports are divided into 2 camps concerning their correct interpretation. There are the cosmic positive thinkers who sincerely believe such contacts to be initiated by the benign space brothers in order to better prepare man for the glorious of the new age. Wow, they use the word new age on this one, page 30. Of interplanetary brotherhood. That's Masonic word there, the Mystery School of Babylon. They use that word brotherhood all the time. The Arab brotherhood. The Masonic brotherhood. Then there are those who feel that such privileged communications from the organization is but an elaborate ploy to ensure the silence of those who have witnessed certain saucer sightings. Those who hold this value also believe that there is at least one UFO group which is, at best, indifferent to the faith of Homo sapiens, which may be even hostile to Earth's inhabitants. It gets crazier. Who seeks to make a sinister battleground of UFO research? I'm just reading my highlighted sentences, so I'm skipping a lot. Just exactly what is a silence group that is determined to make a sinister battleground of flying saucer research? Are they, as some people believe, agents from another world who labor to spread confusion and fear among Earth's serious UFO researchers? Are they, in spite of official denials, agents of some top-secret United States government agency which knows the answer to the flying saucer enigma and has been commissioned to keep the truth from the American public and also the world's public? Could they be agents from another terrestrial political system that endeavors to guard its secrets just a bit longer? Or, as some researchers have theorized, could the silencers and UFOs be coming from an older terrestrial race which has survived and become more technically advanced as it thrives in some remote regions of Earth? Whoever compromises this persistent silence group either knows or gives the impression of knowing a great deal more about the universe than we at our present level of scientific knowledge have been able to guess. Why do the silencers want certain UFO investigations discontinued? Why do they so desperately want the nations of the world to remain ignorant of the true facts about flying saucers? It may be because they realize that the more ignorant man is of the true nature of the dangers which face him, the less able he will be to deal with the crisis situation. The less prepared man is to handle the inevitable confrontation with an alien race, the more rapidly he will allow himself, slave-like, to become subject to a race or culture which considers itself superior to Homo sapiens. Eminent psychologist C.G. Jung wrote with great insight when, in commenting upon the possible contact with flying saucers, he said, "Primitive societies that clash..." Let me repeat that. "We would be placed in a very questionable position of today's primitive societies that clash with the superior culture of the white race." So we would be placed in a very questionable position of today's primitive societies that clash with the superior culture of the white race. All initiative would be wrestled from us. As an old witch doctor once said to me, with tears in his eyes, "We would have no more dreams." So if they microchip everybody and create this new age and new world order, maybe we will have no more dreams. Think of the movie Hunger Games, Divergent, and all the other viciousness on TV and the movies. What did Hitler want to do? To undomesticate mankind. Bring back the warrior. Look at the games they give kids. The stuff they teach on TV. And if the mysterious silence group should in time prove themselves to be citizens of an alien culture, how much longer will they continue to knock on doors and give ominous and unsolicited advice over telephones and harass UFO researchers before they begin invading our world? Oh my. Chapter 3, The Bizarre Mystery of M.K. Jessup, the Allende Letters, and the Philadelphia Experiment. Wait, that's what this whole marathon began with, the Project Montauk, Philadelphia Experiment, Peter Moon, Morris Jessup, Preston Nichols, Duncan Cameron, Al Beback, and others. Transylvania Sunrise, discovering an ancient high-tech facility in the Busigi Mountains in Romania, and the involvement of high-level Masonic leaderships from the Bilderberger groups, etc. Keeping everything from the public. Why? That's why I keep saying, I read the books and make videos. I report. People decide. So anyways, the bizarre mystery of M.K. Jessup and the Allende Letters and the Philadelphia Experiment. Page 33. Are the flying saucers being manned by an ancient race from our own planet? Which seems likely. Apparently we have some underground facilities all over the planet. I've got some of the books. We'll have to look at those. The inner world, they call it. And then over here, the recent discovery I made, apparently in the Pisgah Mountains, the western North Carolina, there is a base. I'm looking at my computer. I just went to the website. The link is skyshipsovercashiers.com. Skyshipsovercashiers.com. And cashiers is C-A-S-H-I-E-R-S. Investigative reporting eyewitness accounts that apparently here in the 45 minutes from where I live, in Cashiers, North Carolina, a new UFO hotspot. This is current information. And let's see, what am I on the editor's corner? The lady's name is I think it's Mary Joyce. So I need Mary Joyce, J-O-Y-C-E, at the website skyshipsovercashiers.com. Mary Joyce on the base at Pisgah, P-I-S-Q-A-H. In this video, I talk about a secret underground military facility beneath the Balsam, B-A-L-S-A-M, Ridge in western North Carolina. It was taped in 2010 at the International UFO Congress in Laughlin, Nevada by Miles Johnston. I keep saying go to see Miles Johnston. M-I-L-E-S-J-O-H-N-S-O-N. Actually, I think the spelling may be wrong there. The Basis series, where a lot of abductees, ex-Illuminati captives, mind control victims, he interviews them. You can watch the interviews. As you know, I'm very much trying to get the word out on the mind control going on now, everywhere. A documentary filmmaker from Great Britain. So go look at that information from Mary Joyce at the website skyshipsovercashiers.com. And also, I went over the current sightings on the UFO website. So I try to do a thorough investigation of this stuff, as bizarre as it is. Do members of this underground civilization walk among us to monitor our scientific advances, to sabotage strategic technical developments, and even to direct our wars? Are these the Illuminati? Are these the reptilian creatures? Or the gray aliens, like in Whitley Strieber's books that I've read? And Aleister Crowley communicating with Hioas, who wrote the book, The Law of One. And there's only one law: do as thou wilt. And his information came from the Hioas character that looks like this, who said that he was the god of war and vengeance. You can't make this stuff up. Has the U.S. Navy secretly accomplished the teleportation of a warship from Philadelphia to its dock near Norfolk by successfully applying Einstein's unified field theory? In a further extension of this theory, did the Navy cause the same warship and its crew to become invisible? Is it true that as a result of the experiment, a number of the crew burst into flames in spontaneous human combustion, while several others lapsed into invisibility in front of their families, and in one case before the patrons of a crowded bar? Was it the fate of over half of the officers and crew members to be committed to psychiatric wards for the rest of their lives as a result of the fantastic experiment which was allegedly conducted on October 1943? Why had the astrophysicist, Mr. Jessup, committed suicide? Some associates mentioned despondency over an approaching divorce as the principal reason. Most of his colleagues, however, were shocked and surprised that Jessup would seek to ultimate escape of a closed car and carbon monoxide. Ever since Jessup's death, there have been UFOologists who have argued that the alleged suicide was the price the astrophysicist had paid for getting too close to the truth about flying saucers. When Jessup wrote The Case for the UFO in 1955, he was able to approach the greatest mystery of our age from the viewpoint of an astronomer, a mathematician, a physicist, and an archaeologist. Throughout his book, Jessup called upon his readers to place pressure on their political representatives to demand research into Einstein's unified field theory so that man might discover the nature of gravity and thereby apply the knowledge to the conquest of outer space. The mysterious Carlos Miguel Allende. On January 13, 1956, Jessup received the first of a series of strange letters signed by Carlos Miguel Allende. Moving on here, page 35. So Allende was sending letters to Jessup, the one who wrote the book, The Case for UFOs. So Allende says the result, according to Allende, was complete invisibility of the ship, destroyer type, and all of its crew while at sea. October 1943. The field was effective in an oblate spheroidal shape, extending 100 yards more or less due to lunar position and latitude, out from each beam of the ship. So they had a big magnetic field extending beyond the ship. Any person within that sphere became a vague in form, but he too observed these persons aboard that ship as though they too were of the same state, yet were walking upon nothing. Sounds like a Star Trek show, TV show. Twilight Zone, sci-fi movie. Any person outside the sphere could see nothing except the clearly defined shape of the ship's hull in the water, providing, of course, that the person was just close enough to see, yet just barely outside the field. Which reminds me of something else interesting. Wow, my investigation takes some crazy twists and turns. So we're going over this book here, The Philadelphia Experiment, and Other UFO Conspiracies by Brad Steiger and Sherry Hansen Steiger. And I've been mentioning on numerous of my videos that Gene Roddenberry, creator of Star Trek, used to go into meditative states. A lot of those people in Hollywood are into the occult, magic, witchcraft, meditation, visiting psychics, all kinds of stuff. So I did get this book in the mail. Hollywood and the Supernatural. And look who the authors are. I didn't know this. Brad Steiger and Sherry Hansen Steiger. The same authors of the book I'm going over. Here's a picture of them. Brad Steiger and Sherry Hansen Steiger are experts in the paranormal, UFOlogy, and Hollywood. Brad Steiger's books include Gods of Aquarius, Mysteries of Time and Space. So anyways, if you go through this book, and I've been reading it and going over some of it in my videos, so I need to probably read this book in its entirety and make a video on it. Lucifer joins the party at the Polanski home. Because I'm doing a book review on the other book, I'll be brief about this. But apparently in Hollywood, they have satanic parties. And sometimes these entities appear, and a lot of people get horribly murdered. Even the Manson family was involved. Hollywood and the Supernatural. It says on the back of this book, the dark and secret history of Hollywood's supernatural world is revealed here more frightening than ever before. The book presents dozens of mesmerizing stories about the denizens of Tinseltown and their contact with the occult. Hence my series, Freemasonry and Satanism. We're talking about UFOs and aliens. We're talking about silencers. We're talking possibly about interdimensional demonic beings. CERN, the collider in Geneva, Switzerland, the home of the myth Frankenstein, and reportedly the home for many years of the Illuminati. And they have the 666 in the logo, and a statue of the destruction goddess Shiva out front. You can't make this stuff up. And then, lest we forget, I keep introducing these books. Psychic Warrior, David Morehouse. I've read this book in its entirety. I make videos on these books. The government has trained psychics to leave their body, spy on other people, other countries, take over people's bodies, and I guess can make anybody do anything. Like take over a foreign agent and have that agent pull out his gun and shoot somebody. And then the person sitting in a chair in Washington, D.C., or wherever they're at whatever base they're at, and their astral body will return to their own body. Is this what we are talking about when we're talking about aliens and UFOs? Is this what they're trying to keep secret? The mystery schools of Babylon, the Freemasons, Rosicrucians, witchcraft, occult, Kabbalah, Hollywood, Zionists, Jesuits, and all kinds of organizations. Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, Club of Rome, the Vatican. I could go on here for an hour. Constance Coombe, Beware of the Rainbow. Go find her book. And you'll see that it's a book-thick accounting of all the organizations all over the world. Even the gay agenda is represented by a rainbow. The New Age is represented by a rainbow. The occult. Jim Mars. I haven't read this book yet. I've read some of it. PSI Spies. Famous author, not to be confused with Tex Mars, who writes about Zionism in Israel, Tex Mars. Jim Mars, celebrated journalist and author of Alien Agenda, Rule by Secrecy, in the New York Times bestseller Crossfire, unravels the mystery behind the psychic phenomenon known as remote viewing. In lean, journalistic style, Mars uncovers the military program that turns soldiers into psychic spies. Find out what happens when the psychic soldiers use their abilities to unlock the mysteries behind UFO, time travel, the assassination of JFK, and the Soviet plot to kill Ronald Reagan. And my favorite guy, you can go listen to him on the internet, YouTube, with his conversations with the Reese, Tim Rifat. Search Tim Rifat's name and Reese on YouTube, and you'll, I think Reese show invites Tim Rifat as a guest often enough. Big thick book. All about mind control, remote viewing. You can't buy this book in the USA. I had to order it from Britain. And finally, one more bit of evidence, and you can see that I really read this book. The Morning of the Magicians. I think I made a video on this book. Suffice it to say, when I say stuff, I like to back it up. As William Cooper said, document, document, document. Always have your documentation. So here's a big, thick book. I didn't do a video on this book. I don't think I have. Sometimes I get mad at myself because apparently I read it and I put little highlights. Those little colorful things on the door. But I didn't highlight anything. So I have to go read it again. Page 113. The Empire of Hitler, like the Almanzar, collapsed in blood and fire. One fine morning on June 1940, the sky over Paris grew dark, and the air was filled with petrol fumes. And under this immense cloud that blackened the faces of the population, overcome by astonishment, terror, and shame, millions of human beings took blindly to flight along the roads raked by machine gun fire. And it looks like the world is preparing for World War III right now. Will that be what happens in the USA when they cause some event, declare martial law, under this immense cloud that blackened the faces of the population, overcome by astonishment, terror, and shame. Millions of human beings took blindly to flight along the roads, raked by machine gun fire. Whoever has lived through the experience knows that the twilight of the gods of the Third Reich can imagine what the end of Cordoba or Granada was like, and 1,000 other ends of the world since time began. The end of the world for the Incas, the Toltecs, the Mayans, the whole history of humanity, an endless end. A fascinating book. I'll just summarize. If anybody really wants to read some interesting stuff. But apparently it explains a lot about the magic and the occult and the governments involved. Himmler, they were all into this stuff, even in Rabbi Marvin Zantelman book, where they were sacrificing the abducted gypsy man from Munich, Germany, killed him, to bring forth this being, spiritual being, interdimensional being, to impregnate a young girl laying on the adjoining altar. Rabbi Marvin Antelman, in his book, To Eliminate the Opaque, Volume 1 and Volume 2, that I talk about a lot, there's a lot more in those books than just this. It says in Hitler's diary that he had a copy of or had read that the entity did appear, but failed to impregnate the young girl. And we know these New Agers, New World Order, evil folks are trying to create some kind of super race. They're into eugenics. They even design custom plagues and viruses like AIDS and stuff that particularly target particular type of individuals, different races. So we can only wonder what they have. It says right here, I'll read a little bit more. Page 183. Morning of the Magician. Louis Parwells and Jacques Berger. It was nevertheless the little men of the free world, the inhabitants of Moscow, Boston, Limoges, and Leg, the little man with his positive and rational philosophy, the moralist rather than a religious fanatic, uninterested in metaphysics or a world of fantasy. The type Zoroaster, described as an imitation man, a caricature. It was this little man, replica of Flamboy's Monsieur Homus, who was to annihilate the great army, whose mission it was to prepare the way for the supermen, the demigod who would reign supreme over the elements and the stars, and by a curious freak of justice or injustice. It was this little man with his limited mentality, years later, who was to launch into space the satellite which was to inaugurate the interplanetary era. Stalingrad and the launching of the first Sputnik were, as the Russians have pointed out, two decisive victories, which incidentally they celebrate together in 1957, on the anniversary of their revolution. So a lot of this material I'm going over here, with the silencers, and then we're seeing 1943, the Philadelphia experiment by the government. You have to take into context the whole picture. That's why I do these videos on various topics, which I believe are relevant to the conversation of Freemasonry and Satanism. So anyways, back to this book. The result, according to Allende, was complete invisibility of a ship, destroyer type, and all of its crew while at sea. October 1943. The field was effective as an oblate spherical shape, extending 100 yards more or less due to lunar position and latitude. out from each beam of the ship. Any person within the sphere became vague in form, but he too observed these persons to be that ship, as though they too were on the same state, yet were walking upon nothing. So they pretty much became disassociated with this reality, moving into the fourth reality. And I thought about that this morning. We know that it appears, with these books I just went over, Remote Viewing, and the Occult in Hollywood, and Morning of the Magicians, it appears that the beings from the fourth dimension, the spiritual realm, can come into our dimension and manifest solidly. And now with the Philadelphia experiment, being able to create magnetic fields or time portals, can we take our material selves or other people or objects like ships and put them into the fourth dimension, another dimension? Now remember the Montauk Project, which we will review further in my videos, was sending thousands of abducted young boys from New York City, Boston, and the surrounding area into these time portals, into this other dimension. Taking a material person and sending them somewhere. What is CERN all about? Some people say it's to open up an interdimensional portal, to allow the other beings in, so the evil forces can dominate planet Earth, destroy civilization as we know it. Just asking questions, just reading books. So we know from history, 1840 to 1940, they had the psychic research societies. I've got many of these books. The Facts of Psychic Science. Thick book, like an encyclopedia. Multiple Personality or Obsession. I just flipped it open, page 75. Look at the top. Trance Control, Mrs. Piper. Look at the top. Trance Control. These books were made. The Facts of Psychic Science and Philosophy, collated and discussed. This one was 1969. Let's see here. Trying to see where it says. So what they did is they had these groups. I'll just read you some of the titles in the chapters. The Study of Psychic Science. The Possible and the Impossible. Mental versus Physical Phenomenon. Chapter 2. Chapter 3. Psychical Research. The Scientific Attitude. Chapter 4. Philosophy of Psychic Science. Spirits and the Spirit World. Spirit Communications. Reincarnation. Chapter 5. Mediums and Mediumship. Fraudulent Mediums, Test Conditions. Chapter 6. Hypnotism. The Subconscious Mind. Psychic Dynamism. Hypnotic Suggestion. Psychic Therapy. Chapter 7. Dual and Multiple Personality. Obsession and Insanity. Now remember when I went over the Gospel of St. Mark, and Jesus and his followers and disciples were walking into some village, and there was a crazed man there hunched over. Everybody thought he was out of his mind. Looks up and sees Jesus and says, "What are you doing here?" And Jesus says, "Out of him, unclean spirit," and the man becomes normal. It's just one example of many. A dozen examples of Jesus casting out demons and spirits of people, evil spirits. So my point is that when they made these books, what they did is they made these Journal of American Society of Psychical Research. Really old books here. And interestingly enough, if you know what the symbol for the Knights of Malta is, the Pope has it on his headdress. The Queen has it as an emblem she wears on her. It's this little cross thing. See that little cross thing? Go look up Knights of Malta or the Queen or the Vatican. They wear that little thing. My point is, from 1840 to 1940, people in high places were having these meetings and research. 1840 to 1940, just prior to World War II. The Journal of American Society for Psychical Research. This is 1917. So what they did is, I have many of these books. I ordered them. Read these for years. So you take these books, little pamphlets, monthly reports, quarterlies, and that's what this book is. There's many of these small books put together from the Psychic Research Society. And they were investigating for 100 years into this psychic research material prior to World War II. And at some point, maybe they opened to some interdimensional portals or awakened even the beings on this planet who had spaceships or higher technologies, who have been here all along, which is what I suspect is the case. It's probably all of the above. There are no alien races on other planets, in my opinion, that are greater than ours, that are going to come and save us. We have on this planet evil forces incommunicado working with interdimensional beings and beings living in the earth or in secret places all over the earth. And they are finding that there are more people on earth than they desire. And I reminded of when Jesus was confronted by Lucifer. And Lucifer, the devil, took him to the top of the mountain and said, look, if you bow down on your knee to me, you can have all of this earth. And Jesus says, no, in my Father's kingdom there are many mansions. That is my kingdom. So Lucifer rules over the earth, and apparently they want to deceive and fool all the people. And I believe the technologies are there to open portals to enter that dimension, and they can enter this dimension, as they did in these psychic research events here. From 1840 to 1940, predominantly, a lot of research going on, government involved, judges, scientists, people in high places in these Masonic lodges, Illuminati, Vatican, Zionism, banksters, the elites. And they've discovered a lot of things they do not share with the people. That sums it up there. Then I got this one book by Many Mansions by Edgar Cayce, the guy who could go into a trance and find cures for people's diseases for the first half of his life, and then he started doing life readings. But he writes this on reincarnation. Because a lot of people he did readings for, he told them they lived in the Atlantean period or over there in the Roman period or Egyptian period, etc., etc. So that'll be an interesting read. Just more stuff for me to do. Could be a lifetime worth of research here. So that just makes us wonder, with the psychic research societies opening interdimensional portals with this Philadelphia experiment on the USS Eldridge, with Einstein's relativity theory, unified field theory, Einstein. Could they use magnetics? Is everything that we are in right now, this reality, with the Van Allen belt around the Earth, which is like a gigantic electric belt, And then, of course, gravity on Earth, and then lightning, and the Earth itself. Everything is electrically charged. Is that what holds everything together in our reality? This is being the third dimension. And, of course, the fourth dimension would be not material like this reality. If I was in the fourth dimension, you probably could take your hand and put it right through me, because I would be more of a spiritual being. Just saying, thinking using my God-given brain, something they don't want us to do. In this book, the silencers would shut UFO sighters up or researchers up. Half of the officers and crew went mad as hatters. Page 35. Carlos Allende was blunt in his assessment of the effect of the force field upon the crew members. Half of the officers and the crew of that ship are at present mad as hatters. A few are even yet confined to certain areas where they may receive trained scientific aid when they either go blank or get stuck. So I guess entering into this other dimension, be dematerializing, time travel, you can get stuck. Remember this other book, other material I went over here. The psychic research they did for 100 years. Hitler was into that stuff. Some horrific stuff in this book that Hollywood is into. The kinds of movies they're making. And interestingly enough, I didn't know this, but the same authors of this book are the authors of this book. The Morning of the Magicians. Big thick book on strange events of even materializing and dematerializing things and entities and beings. Wasn't Hitler supposed to be communicating with some kind of creatures called the Vril, who were underground in Earth's crust? Antarctica was the base they said that they escaped to, that they won't allow anybody to go to now. It's off limits to human beings. Why is that? Wouldn't that be the adventurer's paradise? Somebody who was a skier, snowmobiler, traveler? Why can't we go to the South Pole? Look that up on YouTube videos. So anyways, when these people did get into the Philadelphia experiment, and the USS Eldridge did disappear and reappeared, half of the officers and crew were as mad as hatters, and they got put in mental institutions. Those who did not die or burst into flames or just plain out walk through a wall and disappear right in front of family members. When one went blank, he suddenly found himself fading into invisibility. To get stuck, Allende explained, as a side effect which suddenly prevented a sailor from being able to move of his own violation. If two or more fellow crew members did not come to his aid at once and lay their hands upon him, the unfortunate sailor would freeze. So if you saw somebody kind of starting to fade or get stuck, a couple of the other members of the crew would come over there and touch him and be able to save him. If a man freezes, Allende wrote Jessup, his position must be marked out carefully, and then the field is cut off. Everyone but that frozen man is able to move, to appreciate apparent solidarity again. Apparently they experimented with this stuff a few times. And if somebody disappeared right in front of you, you had to take a chalk and draw a line on the ground where they were, so you don't walk through them and distort the energy field where they are. Apparently. Carefully, the crew members had to step around the spot where their invisible comrades stood frozen on the deck. Then, in a kind of primitive ritual of life transference, the sailors put their hands on a section of the frozen man's bare face or arms. Sometimes it takes only an hour or so. Sometimes it takes all night. Once it took 6 months to get the man unfrozen. This deep freeze is the result of hyperfield that is set up within the field of the body. a highly complicated piece of equipment had to be constructed in order to unfreeze those who became deep freeze subjects. Usually a deep freeze man goes mad, stark raving, gibbering, running mad if his freeze is more than a day of our time. So if he gets frozen for more than a day, you go mad. According to Allende, those who had entered into a deep freeze were like semi-comatose persons who are not aware of time as we know it, who live, breathe, look, and feel, but still are not aware of time, and exist in a kind of netherworld. Makes one wonder with these HARP systems all over the world, the microwave transmitters, Gwen towers, sky spraying of chemicals. What kind of scientific, evil, occult ritual will they do to the whole planet? Change our reality. Change planet Earth's reality. Just theorizing. The faith in lying hands died when this happened, and men's minds went by the scores. The experiment was a complete success. The men were complete failures. Check the Philadelphia papers for a tiny one paragraph. The invisible sailors raided a beer joint, caused such shock and paralysis of the waitresses that little of the comprehensible nature could be gotten from them. So apparently in this semi-materialized state, a bunch of these sailors went into a bar and raised a ruckus, freaking out the waitresses. 2016 language. Moving on, the experimental ship disappeared from its Philadelphia dock. The experimental ship disappeared from its Philadelphia dock, and only a few minutes later appeared at its other dock in Norfolk, Newport News, Portsmouth area. This was distinctly and clearly identified as being that place, the ship, and then again disappeared and went back to Philadelphia dock in only a very few minutes. This was noted in the newspapers after the experiments were discontinued. So when the ship appeared in the other dock, apparently somebody was there, noticed it, and it wound up in the newspapers. So here it says here, after all, it was Einstein's letter to President Roosevelt that brought about the atomic bomb. That's another thing that concerns me. I was going to show you something. I've got books I didn't know I had. I've been reorganizing my bookcases. The Live Earth Global Warming Survival Handbook. You know, I ain't even going to believe this. David D. Rothschild's, the Illuminati guy, David Rothschild, wrote this book, The Live Earth Global Warming Survival Handbook. 77 eventual skills to stop climate change or live through it. You can't make this up. Look at the polar bear and the bottle and his little life raft. You talk about propaganda. And it says Rothschild's on the book. He's the author. This New Age, New World Order. So I guess you're saying to me, when was that book written? Good question. That's what I thought when I found it. (2007). This is 2016. So this is what we're supposed to believe. And I've gone over videos. That Nobel literate guy that I talked about recently. Looking for it on my computer. So people smarter than me have pointed out all right, it was noble, literate, however you say that word, Ivan Giaever's speech meeting on July 2015. So you got this famous man giving a speech, showing charts from satellites and everything else, that there is no truth to global warming. And if you've been watching my videos, there was that one speech by the Secretary of the United Nations, that lady, who said that it was a tool, the propaganda about global warming, to bring about the New World Order, and basically control the people. And they're using environmental concerns, population concerns, terrorism concerns. So global warming is a hoax. According to Noble Literate, smashes the global warming hoax. You can look that up on YouTube. I've saved a copy of everything I talk about in case anybody says I don't have it or I'm wrong. And I watched the video, and he clearly puts out that there's no measurable Earth temperature change in the last 100 years, 1,000 years. It's all normal. And if you look at ice core samples and images on Yahoo search, anybody will see the same. And we know they want to bring about a new world order and a new age. And even that book, the report from Iron Mountain, I go over and over, says that because of the nuclear explosions in Japan, that theoretically ends the wars of all wars. They had to find a new way to keep people loyal to the masters who rule us. So they had to create other threats. And global weather changes was one of them, because now they call it climate change. They're not using global warming. And even the Pope recently, or Obama, has said that it's an emergency. So it is all a hoax, all a plan for some sinister purpose. And we're seeing with this psychic research and these aliens and these underground facilities, something's up. Then I found this book in my collection. I go, man, I don't remember getting that book. Published in 2007, written by Rothschilds, among all people, and a polar bear in a little raft. Global Warming Survival Handbook. So I was reading a little bit of it, and I came across this picture. And I noticed this ring around the Earth. That blue ring. And then I thought to myself, oh my, didn't the governments of the world, the elitists who rule our planet, do things without consulting with the people, keeping secrets from the people, as we're seeing in this Philadelphia experiment UFO investigation, guys in black suits called silencers. Many people, it's been reported, astronomers, people investigating vaccines, biologists, and all kinds of scientists have been murdered, disappeared. Banksters, there's a long list of those a year ago, were dying all over the world. They knew too much. So when I'm looking at this picture, with that blue ring around the Earth, and I'm reminded that our governments exploded almost 400 nukes in the atmosphere. Why? And wouldn't that leave some kind of nuclear waste residue around the Earth? And I'm looking at this picture. Climate control. An introduction to global warming. It says right on here, climate control. 2007. Unbelievable. And we've gone over the other books on biodiversity. sustainability, Agenda 21, doing these crisis actor shootings, UFO sightings almost every day. Crazy? Look at this book. Nice book. It's got all kinds of things you should do this 2007. Lobby your hotel. Enlighten your friends. Then we had that other thing I went over. Model United Nations associations popping up all over the world. Drive a Frybird. I gotta read this book. Reuse the news. Can you imagine when they legislate all these things? Buy carbon offsets. And if they sneak in your house and spy on you, and you threw the wrong kind of can of that you used for food, and you threw it in the wrong waste disposal, man, you could be arrested. Just saying, this is just too much. And not only, the book is one thing, but to be published or written by Rothschilds is just out there. Install a windmill. Yeah, kill a few birds. Subsidize it. They want everybody to start using less. But you think they're going to use less? Al Gore and his yachts and mansions? Imagine. What a piece of propaganda. I can't believe I have this book. But I have been collecting books for years. So my point is why would they explode 400 nukes in our atmosphere? What would happen to all that radiation and debris? Would it be changing Earth, the environment, geoengineering? Is it some kind of alien forces or creatures trying to make planet Earth more conducive to their health and harmful to our health? Why are they going to fence off half of the United States, probably the world, in that biodiversity material? They're going to fence off half of the land in the USA, more, put a buffer zone that'll be off limits also, limited use, and everybody will be forced into the city areas. And I'm wondering, will it stop there? And the answer, of course, is it never stops there. It gets more oppressive and more oppressive. H.G. Wells, the book I went over, in The Conspiracy of a New World Order, and he says that humans are animals not to be trusted. The Zionist Jews of the Talmud, the evil Bible, says the best of the goyim, non-Jews, shall be killed. Their Freemasonic books I go over calls the non-Masons, uninitiated people, profane. You can't even tell your son or your wife or anybody, and they're not even treated as equal if you're one of these high-level Masons, Illuminati, or other cultists of the mystery schools of Babylon, into some kind of witchcraft secret stuff, Kabbalah. And then we go over this. It all has to be connected, in my opinion. Moving on. So, the Navy got a copy of Jessup's book in the mail. the case for UFOs, but it was all marked up. So the Navy got a hold of Jessup, invited him to the Office of Naval Research in Washington. The astrophysicist was more than a little surprised when an officer handed him a paperback copy of his own book, Case for the UFO. And so the Navy received it in a manila envelope, and somebody had taken the time and effort to completely annotate his copy, his study of UFO. The notations were made by 3 individuals who are members of an older Earth civilization with full knowledge of the origin of UFOs and a mental library of remarkable scientific facts. The 3 note writers offer a smug, trifle arrogant, and make little effort to control their mockery of Homo sapiens, we humans. So that's what these beings think of us. They laugh at us. And one presidential guard, security guard, who retired, he said, you know, when they had elections, and whoever won, they would give each other the high five and brag about how they fooled the public again. This was a retired presidential guard. Stuff you learn if you keep researching. So the Navy requested the 2 Allende letters from Jessup, and according to Robert Jordan, president of Viara Inc. in 1962, 50 copies of the letters and annotated book for the case of the UFO were reproduced for study by the U.S. Navy Research. That would be this book. So not only does this book contain the book, The Case for UFOs, it also contains the edition with the markups in it, and the Allende letters. And I've shown this. I probably should go over this book. You can tell what was the book and what was the markups here. I read this a while back. Fascinating read. But it's so interesting to read it now again that I know more. It's even more interesting. The notes of Mr. A, Mr. B, and Jemmy. Why did the Navy want the Allende letters? What elevated the letters to kook status, above kook status? Had the experiment with the invisible ship actually been conducted? The 3 mystery note makers alluded to the secret project a number of times. So if the project did actually happen, the ship was invisible, on the bottom here, and somebody seemed to know all about it, I guess the Navy would want to know who knew all about this, and keep it from the public, and apparently had Mr. Morris Jessup murdered. And among other people, as we've been reading in these books, UFO investigators conveniently die. Alright, gotta try to finish up this video. June 24th, 1947, flying saucers were born with Kenneth Arnold's strange sighting near Mount Rainier. So that's when the whole thing started hugely. 1947, out there in Washington State, I think. Kenneth Arnold was flying in his plane near Mount Rainier and saw a bunch of UFOs. So one of the annotated notes here by the aliens wrote in Mr. Jessup's book, don't worry, Jimmy, Mr. B writes, referring to Arnold's sighting, those were LM ships. Not S-men. They are an improved type and were only on training flight. That is why their leader interconnected their force field to teach them level telecontrol without inducing a fear block. So these are some of the notes by the people who marked up Jessup's book. So this seems to say the LMs seem to be friendly and indifferent to Earthlings. The SMs, the S-men, mentioned above are hostile. So there are these other beings on our planet, possibly, and some of them are friendly and some are hostile. So they wanted to know whether they were friendly or hostile. LMs, pals, SM. So they're saying the LMs are our pals and the SMs they don't know. Even if he knew, neither he nor any number of men could do anything about it. This is what the alien said. Even if we knew who these creatures were, we couldn't do anything about it. For first, they would refuse to even believe. Requires true humiliation, humility. I gotta watch my reading here, getting tired. And actual fascination. These are the aliens or beings, whoever's talking. I am not adverse to saying that a force field can make a man fly, for I have seen it done. I know the cause of this flight, and I am not disturbed. Paris Exhibition 1951. Scientists from a Paris university demonstrated this. An AP photo was sent to the U.S. showing this action. Associated Press. U.S. Navy force field experiments of 1943. So this would have been in Jessup's book that was marked up. These aliens are actually talking about the Navy's force field experiments. October produced invisibility of crew and ship. Fearsome results, so terrifying. Fortunately, further research halted. Strange skyfalls. Jessup discusses such phenomenon, and I've discussed this before, as rock falls, ice falls, falling animals, falling aquatic life. He writes that the only common denominator for the observed conditions turned out to be, of all things, hyperoponic tanks in spacecraft. That's the Dr. Jessup's theory. The alien says, on the head. So I guess Mr. Jessup got that correct. When Jessup further mentions the strange falls of raw meat, Jemmy explains, spoiled food dropped. So that makes sense. If they got spoiled meat, they just push it out of the craft, right on the top of somebody's farmhouse building. Jemmy's comment on Jessup's discussion of mysterious disappearance of men is chilling. The alien says, hey, if he only knew why, he would die of shock. If he only knew why, he would die of shock about the disappearance of men on our planet's history. If he only knew why, he would die of shock. We've gone over all this stuff, these books. Strange thing from Rothschilds. Global warming, 2007. How are you going to survive? Psychic research. 100 years. Hollywood into the occult and magic. Gene Roddenberry going into meditative states to get the storylines for Star Trek. And so much more. Thank you for watching my video. Rick Marrico reporting.